There is nothing wrong with your radio.
Do not attempt to adjust the volume.
We are controlling the broadcast.
For the next hour we will control all that you hear.
You are about to experience the knowledge and insights of the media mothership.
All right. Just an echo. Goes to the machine. I don't know what that was. This is Media Mothership, though, on Edge Radio 99.3 FM. And I'm your host, Craig, joined by co-host Taylor.
Hello.
Special guest Marcus.
Howdy, how we going?
We are all locked in now, and I feel good.
Chat, are we locked in?
I think we've got all systems green on streaming. So we are indeed streaming on YouTube and Twitch, as well as on the internet, www.edgeradio.org.au. Do people still say www in front of URL these days? Is that dropped?
I don't say it.
I think it's dropped. All right. Well, edgeradio.org.au also has us streaming. On Media Mothership, we explore how media shapes the reality around us. And as we deep dove into a few weeks back with understanding the Donald Trump-Zelensky fallout through the John Cena heel turn, we're updating that now with our exploration of the latest WrestleMania event, WrestleMania 41. So all that and more coming up on Media Mothership.
That was brilliant.
I think
It was the little grin that sold it for me.
I'm getting better. So, WrestleMania 41. Let's set it up with a little bit of an explanation. Right, so WrestleMania 41, in my notes, the notes that I've put together via ChatGPT, I confess, which is why it's so great you're here, Marcus, just to fact check all of this information. So it was in... okay, well, I think this is already wrong.
It was in Las Vegas.
Because it's saying here it was in Paradise, Nevada.
No, it was in Vegas.
Oh, that's not a good start.
Well, remember, ChatGPT is like 2 years out. So
this
you
is
should have used
Copilot.
Grok.
No, I used Copilot.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it says here next, it was a 2-night spectacle featuring WWE's biggest stars from Raw and SmackDown. Is that
Okay,
true?
that makes sense.
That's good. What's the difference between Raw and SmackDown?
The two A shows of WWE. Raw airs on Monday nights, SmackDown airs on Friday nights, and they both have their own individual roster of wrestlers because the roster is that loaded. They need 2 3-hour shows to fit everyone on there. And they also have different titles that are defended on them. At this point in time, Raw has got the World Heavyweight Championship, the Women's World Championship, and the Intercontinental Championship. Men's and women's. Yep. Plus the women's tag team belts and one of the men's tag team belts. There are 2 men's tag team belts, but it's just like the world belts and the WWE belts. Like, what's the difference? On SmackDown, they have got the Undisputed Championship, which is seen as the premiership, the main title, which is more important than the World Heavyweight, even though some of them aren't heavyweights. It's got the Women's Championship, not to be confused with the Women's World Championship. They're 2 different titles. They also have the US men's, the US women's, and one of the men's tag team championships.
One of hearing that list of belts and championships, I did come across a YouTube short conspiracy theory about what Cena's possible plan might be, which is to basically, it sounds a bit like when the DC or Marvel universe kills off all their superheroes and reboots with a year 1 kind of fresh slate. Someone was saying that Cena's basically going to destroy the belts, right? These belts are going to be retired or something, and they're going to reboot some championship narrative. Does that make sense? Have you heard rumors? Is that an exciting thing that I've said on air?
Look, that has absolutely happened in wrestling promotions before. WCW in their dying days back in 1999 literally did a company-wide reboot where all ongoing feuds stopped and all titles were vacated. and they didn't make things any better for themselves because they still went out of business about 18 months later.
Because is there a barrier for entry in wrestling in terms of understanding the storyline, like there is in comics?
Entering wrestling is extremely difficult because it is an ongoing narrative that goes back decades. It's very hard to find a point to slot into. Probably the best time to start watching, even then, you're still going to, be missing a lot of context because there used to be a very high turnover for wrestlers because they used to be on the road performing 300 days a year, massive injury, massive burnout, a lot of problems with substance abuse. So generally speaking, a wrestler would only be at the top of the card for 3 or 4 years and then they'd be gone. These days, because, they actually get time off and they actually get to look after themselves, a lot of wrestlers on the show right now have been on there for 10, 15 years. So there's less turnover, which means that the storylines are, they're longer and there are more implications. If there's any one time of the year, but also it's odd because even though there's this convoluted backstory to every wrestling promotion, it's something that people only watch for a couple of years. Jim Cornette, who was a booker for many years, has coined what he calls the 7-year rule, where basically every 7 years there will be enough of a turnover in wrestling fandom, like enough people will have stopped watching because they will have grown out of it, that you can start telling the same story again and no one will notice.
Where are we at that cycle, do you think?
It's a very ongoing thing. I think with the other thing is that he coined that prior to the internet. So it used to be a show would air once, like a weekly show would air once. It would very rarely get repeated unless there was a marathon on or something along those lines or a highlight reel. And if you wanted to watch a pay-per-view, you had to hunt down the videotape of it.
But now with the internet, as we'll be dipping into tonight, that information is quite easy to hand. You can see replays. It is because it is. I mean, one of the things that is different at the moment is the distribution through Netflix has broadened its engagement. So now, can you watch Raw if you have a Netflix account at the moment? Right.
If you have Netflix, you can watch Raw and SmackDown. I'm pretty sure you can watch NXT, which is their developmental B show.
Pretty close to where it's being aired in the US.
Yeah, they broadcast it live here as well.
Wow. Right. Yep. So you can. We are at a. I think when I was chatting with you about WrestleMania, it's a golden age. Would you say in terms of its engagement at the moment, its popularity, its profile? It's
definitely in its third major boom period of sort of the last 40 years, because there was the initial rise of Hulkamania, and then after the steroid trial in the early 90s, wrestling in general just took a massive downturn from the early to the mid 90s. Started coming back up with WCW, which was then WWF's rival with the New World Order angle in 1996. And WWF responded with the Attitude Era, which sort of late 97, early 2001, where The Rock and Stone Cold were at the top of the ladder. And then the business took a massive nosedive after WCW went out of business. And there were some questionable booking decisions following the end of the Attitude Era. And now this is the third major boom period, 24 years later.
So, yeah, clearly Netflix has also seen this as a good thing to bankroll. And WrestleMania, so this was WrestleMania 41, which is the first WrestleMania to air on Netflix. Let's just hear that it's the highest grossing and most viewed WrestleMania in WWE history. Have you come across any data suggesting that? Is there a sense that this WrestleMania was shattering records of attendance or merchandise?
It didn't shatter records of attendance. It would have shattered records of the gate that they made, because they keep jacking up the price on the tickets. So it absolutely, I absolutely believe that it's the highest grossing Mania just because of how overpriced the tickets have become. I mean, rewind to 1997, WrestleMania 13, which has one of the greatest matches ever, and they were giving tickets away because no one wanted to see it, and also had the lowest buy rate ever. But the thing about Mania 41 is that I believe that, but also it demonstrably doesn't have the highest attendance because there are. The arena, they've wrestled in stadiums rather.
Right.
They've wrestled in bigger stadiums. There've been, I think, 3 WrestleManias that have had over 100,000 people in the building at the same time.
I do like imagining what the view's like from those nosebleed seats right at the back.
There are YouTube or Facebook shorts where you see people they pull out their phones and they zoom in to the TV screen above the ring. Like, it's utterly woeful. At that point, you're not there to see a match. You are there to experience the crowd.
The atmosphere. Yeah, which should still be good. All right, so major storylines that went down. So it says here the event featured John Cena's final WrestleMania match where he defeated Cody Rhodes to win the undisputed WWE Championship, marking his record 17th world title. Is that?
Yes, that was
that happened.
One of the major stories going in. Just to answer a question from before, when you asked the best time to start watching, the best time is probably to watch wrestling is probably to start. Is the beginning of January.
Oh, really? So there's an entry point there at the start of the year.
Yep, because at the start of January, they're building to the first major premium live event of the year, the Royal Rumble, which happens in late January, early February. And whoever wins the Royal Rumble gets a title shot at one of the major belts at WrestleMania. So that crowns the number one contender for the biggest show of the year. So the story that they've told going in with Cena is that he announced last year it was going to be his last ever year. He was doing his retirement run. It was going to be his last Royal Rumble. It was going to be his last Elimination Chamber. And so Royal Rumble determines who challenges for one belt. Elimination Chamber happens after and determines who's going to challenge for the other belt. I remember thinking, all right, cool. Well, he's not winning the Rumble then because he's not going to be at the Elimination Chamber if he wins the Rumble.
Yes.
So he came second at the Rumble and then won the Elimination Chamber under dodgy circumstances. And there was that famous heel turn where they'd been teasing that Cody was going to turn evil, but actually it was Cena who aligned himself with The Rock.
Really? So there was some teasing that Cody
was
doing a heel turn.
So Cody Rhodes was previously the undisputed champion and the top babyface of the company, like the main guy of the company. And there was this bit with Rock. The Rock who's sort of the main villain, like he's like Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget, trying to corrupt Cody and take his soul. And in the end, Cody told him to go and F himself. But then it turned out the actual people thought that there was going to be a twist with Cody turning heel, but the actual twist was that Cena turned heel.
So cultural impact with appearances from celebrities like Travis Scott and the return of Becky Lynch, WrestleMania 41 reinforced WWE's influence in mainstream entertainment. Travis Scott, Becky Lynch, what's that?
We'll start with Becky Lynch first because that's much easier. Becky Lynch she's been one of WWE's top wrestlers for about 7 or 8 years. Not just one of the top women wrestlers, one of the top wrestlers, full stop. She just took 11 months off after her last contract ran out to spend time with her daughter, and there was absolutely no announcement that she was going to be back. She joined in with Lyra Valkyria, whose tag team partner had been injured, and so when Becky comes back at WrestleMania with absolutely no warning, when her theme music hits, everyone went nuts.
Right. And again, it's that theme music, and the audience picks up, and the sense of cultural impact that this figure.
So that was Becky Lynch being there was a big moment for wrestling fans. Travis Scott being there is this very bizarre thing that Triple H has been doing. So for anyone who's unaware, Triple H is the booker, the head of content, where he went to a random Travis Scott concert last year and gave Travis Scott the hardcore belt, which he revived. And they've done this really...
a music concert.
Yeah, went to an actual... Because Travis Scott's Grammy Award winner, sells out really big venues. And Triple H went and gave him the hardcore belt at a concert. And they've done this... What they've done with it is really strange because they've essentially turned Travis Scott into, I guess, the Silver Surfer to the Rock's Galactus, or like he's like the mouth of Sauron, where he just randomly appears, but he doesn't actually say anything. He doesn't really do anything. He just appears and will occasionally like try to hit someone in the ring, and that's all he does. Like he's contributed nothing other than a couple of cheap shots to Cody Rhodes.
Right.
And it was just so. This is one of those moments where everyone knows that wrestling is predetermined. It's scripted. It's not a real conflict. And people get frustrated with, oh, man, Travis Scott at WrestleMania 41 really stunk up the joint. And people say, it's not a real fight. You know that it's not real. Like, yeah, but it's still bad storytelling. Because the match that Cena had with Cody was not very good. Because...
At WrestleMania.
It was atrocious. And the reason it's atrocious is because... The storyline they're going for is that people have been asking for Cena to turn heel and become a bad guy for 22 years because they got sick of him a very long time ago. But he's been part-time for the last 10 years. And it's weird because he was a baby face for so long and everyone booed him when he was a full-timer because they hated him and they were sick of him. And then when he became a part-timer, all of a sudden they loved him. They couldn't get enough of him and they wanted him to come back. And so the problem is that his heel turn, and it's like he could have just coasted by and just played the hits and given people what they wanted for the last year, but he's actually, trying something new with the heel turn, but it's just not really working because he's acting indignant towards the audience for the negative reactions that they gave him 10 years ago. Whereas for the last 10 years, they've loved him.
Right.
And it's just there's a really big disconnect between his reason for turning heel, but the way the fans are actually treating him in real life.
Yeah, so I guess the script that he's working with and on is that he has given so much to the fans. The fans are keep taking from him. It's too much. And that kind of antagonism towards the fans that maybe it has an old history to it, but
it's just, and the core tenet of a heel, the main principle of a heel is that you don't cheer for heels, you boo for them. And so a lot of wrestlers, when they turn heel, will deliberately stop doing the flashy moves that everyone loves because they don't want people to cheer for them. So Cena has completely stripped back his style, and this is the first match he's wrestled as a heel. He hasn't wrestled once in the lead up between the Elimination Chamber and Mania, 7 weeks. Cody didn't defend the belt once since the Rumble, so it's over 2 months. So going in, there's a very strange lack of heat, I suppose. And Cena's just deliberately, he kept on stepping outside of the ring so that he couldn't get pinned. The match couldn't legally end. And it was an obvious heel tactic to get the audience to boo for him, but the audience kept on cheering. Actually, no, it's a bit of an odd one because people are comparing it to Rock versus Hogan at Mania 18.
Oh yes,
where The Rock was the baby face and Hogan was the irredeemable villain, but they cheered for Hogan and they booed for The Rock. But this, the audience sort of booed for everyone. They booed Cena when they were supposed to. They booed Cody because I guess they'd gotten sick of him. But it's also because, and it goes back to one of the strangest things about WWE over the last sort of 15, 20 years is the disconnect between the people who are in the stadiums and arenas watching these major events and the people watching at home. Because the people who are watching it in the stadiums and the arenas, they are the people with the disposable income who are super nostalgic for what they watched when they were kids. So that was one of the reasons why when Rock went up against Cena about 10 or 12 years ago, everyone was booing Cena out of the building because they hated him, but they'd grown up watching The Rock during the Attitude Era, so they were cheering to see him back. Whereas the kids at home would be cheering for Cena because he's their favorite wrestler. And now we've got the people who are in the stadium to see Cena versus Cody grew up watching Cena at home. They were the kids cheering for Cena at home while the stadiums were booing him. And so now they're cheering for him, and it's just very strange. And it was just not an entertaining match. And it just ends with Travis Scott coming out. Fiend hits. And everyone's like, oh, if he's here, The Rock's going to be here. And The Rock's not there. It's just Travis Scott awkwardly walks to the ring holding the hardcore title. And it takes him a solid 4 minutes to walk to the ring. The entrances in WWE have been ridiculously long the last couple of years. But 4 minutes takes.
Walking slowly, high-fiving.
He was walking slowly. He's working heel, so he wasn't high-fiving. He was just awkwardly staring at Cody and Cena the entire way to the ring. It was terrible. It was awful. And then when he gets there, Cody distracts him, and it's just... He tries to distract Cody, and Cody hits him. He gets revenge for the beatdown that Cody got from him and Cena and Rock at Elimination Chamber. It's just strange. Why is this happening? And more to the point... The thing that always breaks my suspension of disbelief, because nothing requires more suspension of disbelief than professional wrestling. If you can get into it, it's great. But if you stop to think about it, it makes no sense. And so why is it that Travis Scott is coming out here to help Cena, but none of Cody's allies are coming out to save him? Why are they just letting this happen?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, as a video I was watching about moments where wrestling has broken the fourth wall, and they try and talk about that manufactured moment. But just before we get past WrestleMania, so it says historic matches. Seth Rollins won a dramatic triple threat match against CM Punk and Roman Reigns, with Paul Heyman's shocking betrayal adding to the drama. So that was what it's defined as a historic match. How was that as a counterpoint to the Cena match? The triple threat match.
Just to get some context. So WrestleMania for the first 35 years was a one-night event. And then after a 7-hour Mania, they went, this is ridiculous. And they started making it a 2-night event. And
Right. So when was it a one night? It was a one night up until a few years
for
back.
36 years, WrestleMania
Wow.
was a one-night event or a one-day event because like the last few went for 7 hours.
That's a long event.
For Mania 35, the main event, I think the main event started at midnight, and the main event is usually one of, if not the longest, matches on the card.
Really?
And then after it finished, 80,000, 100,000 people then have to get in their cars and go home. So the traffic is ungodly.
All right. So then over 2 nights. So the triple threat match was the first night?
Yes. Sorry. So the point that I was getting to with that is that there's a lot of discussion over whether or not, because the main event is the last event of a show, but there's some discussion as to whether or not night 1 of WrestleMania constitutes a main event or if it is the midpoint of the whole weekend.
Right. And I guess by that also the bragging rights.
Yes.
To be that in that event.
And the storyline going in, which is very much a real life storyline, is that so there were 3 guys: CM Punk, real name Phil Brooks, Seth Rollins, real name Colby Lopez, and Roman Reigns, real name Joe Anoa'i. So in kayfabe, these 3 wrestlers all hated each other, and they've been building the story over about 18 months. In real life, the real story going on was that Phil Brooks, who plays CM Punk, had been at the top of the card in the early 2010s, and he's a long-time wrestling fan, but had never gotten to main event WrestleMania. Even when he was the champion, they would put Cena versus Rock on at the end of the night rather than him. And he was supposed to main event night 1 last year. The plan was him to win the Elimination Chamber and challenge for the World Heavyweight belt, but he got his tricep torn in the Royal Rumble, and so he had to sit out.
The tricep tour was an accident, one of those unfortunate.
It was an
accidents?
accident. He was very injury prone for a couple of years. He seems to be better now. I think he's learned how to work safer. But the benefit is that it ended up leading into the best feud of the year, where they went, so this guy, Drew McIntyre, has accidentally injured him. Right, okay, cool. Let's write that into the story, and these two can have a really great feud out of it. Yeah. But basically the story was Punk wanted his main event, and they gave him the main event of night 1 against Rollins and Reigns, and people are saying, well, is it a real main event if it's not the final match of the weekend? But basically the 3 of them put on an incredible triple threat match. So 1v1v1, no disqualification. Whoever gets the first pinfall is the winner. And the storyline going in is that Paul Heyman, who in real life is a wrestling booker, a wrestling promoter, has been for 40 years, generally a manager of heels or heel stables, had been working with Roman Reigns for about 4 or 5 years because Reigns, for the longest time, couldn't cut a promo to save his life. Paul Heyman and CM Punk, in real life, very good friends going back to ECW and Ring of Honor. And so the storyline going in was that Heyman had to leave Roman Reigns and be in CM Punk's corner, and then at the climax of the match, he betrays them both and allies himself with Seth Rollins. And even though in isolation it was a great match, and there's a really beautiful moment where it's only been done on fan cams, phones, after the match ended. But after the end of the match, everyone else leaves, and it's just CM Punk in the ring by himself. And he's just overcome with emotion. He kisses the ring, and he's in tears, and they start playing his music as he leaves.
Oh.
So they were like, yeah, this is your main event. You've earned this. Congratulations. We really appreciate you. And now they've just, on Raw 2 nights later on the Monday night, they've gone straight into, all right, cool. So Rollins and Paul Heyman have now started a heel faction, and that's going to be so Rollins has been a babyface for a few years now. Everyone loves him. They sing his theme song and everything. And they're like, this is going to be our new storyline moving forwards, is this heel faction with Rollins and with Heyman, and CM Punk is going to be one of their main opponents. And
it was such a delightful, almost like silent movie performance that was done during that night of betrayal as the Paul Heyman character. Like, he's dressed in a suit, right? And he comes out and, it's like watching a silent film in terms of his emoting so strongly with his face and his mannerisms. I'm in a real dilemma. What am I going to do? And I've seen a couple of fan videos of this performance, because it's one thing, I guess, seeing it with the choreography. It's another thing when you get the immediacy of it. It's like, it's so delightfully ham-fisted, and clearly he's, I guess, chewing the scenery with that performance. And then he goes up, like the nature of his betrayal was, what was it? Like it was nut shots for
Nut
all
shots.
of them?
If you want,
sneaking up and then hitting them in the nuts.
if you want someone to turn heel, get them to punch another man in the stones.
Yeah. Because there's been a lot of that. I mean, that's what the Cena heel turn with Cody Rhodes was, kicking him in the nuts.
Yep.
The Paul Heyman betrayal of CM Punk and who was it? Was it Reigns? Was the other one he betrayed?
Yeah, betrayed Reigns and Punk and sided with Rollins.
Yeah, crawling behind them and then nutting them from behind them through their legs.
It's been a thing for one of the most infamous heel turns in all of wrestling. Not all of wrestling, in the modern era rather, is or one of the most infamous in terms of the most badly handled ones. 2018, I believe. They had Shinsuke Nakamura, who's known as the King of Strong Style, one of the biggest New Japan wrestlers ever. Came to WWE after an extremely storied and successful career in Japan, won the Royal Rumble, got a title, and everyone went nuts. They were singing his theme song. They were so happy for him. He got into a World Heavyweight Championship match against AJ Styles, who he'd previously had really great matches with in Japan. The match they had was very mediocre. Shinsuke lost and then turned heel by punching AJ Styles in the nuts. And literally that was the nature of their feud from then on. It was that Shinsuke had an obsession with trying to get AJ Styles in the cojones. And it's just,
and when was this? What year?
2018, 2019.
Oh, right.
Vince McMahon basically just going, he's Japanese, he can't speak great English, he'll never make it on the mic, so I can't have him as a top guy.
Right.
And he just Shinsuke Nakamura never recovered from that. It's just...
That heel turn and
it's sad. But on the other hand, he gets paid $6 figures a year to hang out in Florida and surf, so I don't feel too bad for him.
So WrestleMania 41 was more than just a wrestling event. It was a global spectacle blending sports, entertainment, and storytelling at an unprecedented scale. I've got some YouTube shorts. We'll play them. I've just grabbed some media that's been circulating recently.
Go for
it. So this is from 2 weeks ago. The title is The Rock Ruined WWE WrestleMania 41. So we'll hear, this is a fan theory. It goes for 17 seconds. So we'll play it and we'll get your feedback.
Sorry. Comes back at Elimination Chamber and gets the big moment, and he shows up at Bad Blood and gets the big moment with the bloodline thing. You know, he shows up at these random events, these random moments, and he basically comes whenever he feels like it, and then he's not actually committed to the schedule, and he's not able to do this full time.
Now, all right, so he's complaining about Rock.
Yep.
What was the nature of Rock ruined WWE WrestleMania 41 that this fan's complaining about?
He ruined it because he had set up over several appearances that date back to Bad Blood of last year, which is, I think, around sort of September, October. He'd been slowly building up this idea of like him and Cena being this new dangerous alliance. He's the main villain. He tried to corrupt Cody Rhodes. He's got history with a whole bunch of people on the roster. Everyone was expecting, and last year he was in the main event of night one and he interfered in the main event of night two. Everyone was expecting, because he's the main villain of WWE essentially, that there'd be some kind of involvement to progress the story, and he just wasn't there. He's just this non-entity as far as the story is concerned, even though he was. And one of the reasons why Cena's heel turn initially was so well received is because, there's the intrigue of he's working with The Rock. What's going to happen in the story? And then it just degrades into Cena saying, I'm a heel now because the audience is mean to me.
And as you were saying, Travis Scott appeared rather than The Rock at the end.
And what's he doing there? No one knows. He doesn't say anything. He just appears, tries to hit Cody, and gets whacked in return, and that's it.
So do you think The Rock ruined WWE WrestleMania 41?
I think if he was going to insert himself into the build, he should have been at WrestleMania. If he wasn't going to be at WrestleMania, he should not have been part of the build. It's basically you're giving us the first two acts of a story and not delivering the third.
Next clip is who should dethrone John Cena for the undisputed WWE Championship. This was from 8 days ago.
That John Cena is a 17-time world champion, it kickstarts a whole new exciting phase of his final WWE run. We know that he isn't going to retire with the WWE title intact, but there's a good chance he holds on to it for at least half of the remaining 8 months he has. So who should be the one to dethrone him? It depends on whether he's still a heel or not by the end of the year. If he continues in this direction, the logical choice is to have Cody Rhodes regain the title, as it gives him a full circle moment and something to chase again. If Cena turns babyface, then the best call might be to either have Gunther dethrone him in a dream match, or Seth freaking Rollins to get one over on his old rival one last time.
All right, so a classic kind of speculation of could Cena turn babyface? Could there be another match between Cody Rhodes? How did you feel about that unpacking of who should dethrone John Cena for the Undisputed?
In theory, it makes sense for Cena and Cody to have a rematch and for Cody to get his win back and get the belt back and be the top guy again. But I feel that's really risky because the audience were all there for Cena and they weren't there for Cody. So
right, because as you're saying, they were booing Cody, right? Where they should be cheering him.
When a year previously they'd all been clamoring for him to finish his story. There's that whole story about how Dwayne Johnson, The Rock in real life, had tried to oust Cody from the main event of WrestleMania 40 because he wanted it for himself, and everyone took to Twitter to get hashtag We Want Cody trending, and there was this huge real life story about getting Cody back in the main event to follow the creative that Triple H had been planning. And everyone was behind him then, and then they turned on him at WrestleMania and the SmackDown before WrestleMania. So I'm thinking, I don't think putting Cody and Cena in a rematch is necessarily safe. If anything, they also said Gunther, right?
Gunther, yeah.
Gunther would be interesting because to have Gunther challenging for the Undisputed Belt would be a lot of fun. He's basically this really old school. He's very old school in terms of his moveset. So power bombs, knife edge chops, sleeper holds. That's pretty much it. Very basic, very 1970s. Also, he's totally not Hitler.
Because he's very German, right?
He's Austrian.
Very German, right? Austrian.
He's Austrian. He's got
so
slick back hair.
Kind
he's Der Ring General.
Is that his name?
The Ring General, yeah.
The Ring General.
Yeah.
Like they're going a whole kind of wartime Prussian military.
Comes on in a military greatcoat with opera playing.
Is that problematic? Does anyone say, this would be problematic? It works.
Here is the thing. Wrestling is frequently very problematic. It's always had a very, very sketchy relationship with race. I think, this is just my interpretation, I could be wrong. The guy who plays Gunther, I don't know what his real name is, sorry. But his charisma is quite frankly off the charts, and he makes it work. I mean, the dude gets by with maybe 4 or 5 moves, and everyone loves him and thinks he's one of the best heels working today. So I think he pulls it off. I could be wrong, but I mean, they've had other instances of racially insensitive gimmicks, like Muhammad Hassan, whose gimmick was that he was a man of Arabic descent who felt that Middle Eastern people were being treated unfairly following 9/11, and he was a heel.
Oh.
Yeah, that lasted about 6 months, and I'm pretty sure he was played by an Italian American.
Gosh, ouch.
There's a pretty sketchy history of race and wrestling, but I think Gunther makes it work. Yeah,
it's tricky, isn't it, when the wrestlers also need to, again, do that fourth wall moment and say, hey, you know, because when they're like, I was watching something that was like some good old boy, like wrestlers that were performing good old boys, anti-immigration kind of narratives against a Mexican wrestler that was, the storytelling was around that kind of first Trump era.
Yep.
You know, trying to like clamp down on illegals kind of narrative and thinking that this wrestler's an illegal immigrant, they're taking our jobs kind of narrative. And then this interview was saying, well, you know, this is a role. This is not my thoughts. On that, though, I did enjoy in the last WrestleMania, or pre-WrestleMania, we were talking about the matchup that didn't happen on the night, right? Which was against the El Grande guy.
Oh, El Grande Americano.
And that's really political, right? This is a performance, like you've got the Gulf of Mexico being renamed Gulf of America. So how have they wrapped that up as a narrative? Because you've got some really exciting Mexican wrestlers in WWE. So what was that match meant to be on paper?
It ended up getting, so it was meant to be El Grande Americano, who is...
It sounds like a burger.
It really does, or a burrito. who is the wrestler Chad Gable wearing a luchador mask and pretending that he's someone else. And
No one knows that, right? It's like a secret identity. Like, who is he? I'm a real Mexican wrestler.
the joke is that it's so obvious that it's Chad Gable, but people act as though it's not. He was meant to have a match against Rey Mysterio, who is not even Mexican. He's of Mexican descent, but he's from San Diego. He's lived in California all of his life. But he's considered one of the very greatest. I don't think he's even necessarily a practitioner of lucha libre. He's a luchador in that he wears the mask.
Yep.
But considered one of the absolute greatest sort of lightweight wrestlers ever.
Right.
He was supposed to be those two because Mysterio's been on the roster he's been a wrestler for about 35 years. And still moves like an absolute demon. So it was meant to be those two against each other, but Mysterio injured himself and he got replaced with another luchador, and it was a good match. But the story is still ongoing. I mean, there was, because the blow off didn't happen. I mean, Chad Gable's still playing El Grande Americano. He's still feuding with the other luchadors on the roster.
All right. Moving to the next little clip. Cena, after winning WWE title, Cody's reaction.
Cody didn't say a word and walked out after losing his title. Cena in the press conference said that he's just here so he won't get fined. He labeled all questions asked to him, including The Rock's involvement, as clickbait questions, and said that it's lazy reporting. He said to tune in to Raw tomorrow to see how he ruins wrestling. Becky Lynch tweeted that she's back, and she brought her daughter Rue to the press conference too. Fans are criticizing the Night 2 main event of Mania 41 because it was nowhere close to that of WrestleMania 40. But Cena winning the title was the best decision. Fans pointed out when last year The Rock said that he will be at WrestleMania 41. But the reality is different now. In the post-WrestleMania press conference, Triple H said that Chyna will get a solo induction when the time is right. Dominic was receiving a "You deserve it" chant in the post-show. He may turn babyface again after 2.5 years.
I think he gets another title.
All right. Well, that was that human YouTube short there by the human voice. Very AI based. Well, so there's a lot to unpack there. So Cena did a post-match press conference in character as a heel.
Yes.
Did that salvage some of the less than successful match that had happened, or was the post-match press conference seen as a fizzle itself, or?
The Cena heel turn is so strange because a lot of people are enjoying the character work that he's doing. There's just a disconnect between the initial heel turn and his concurrent motivation and the timing of his motivation. The match, I think, was just bad by design because Cena, in character, is trying to make wrestling lame and he wants to retire and take the belt with him. He wants to take his ball and go home. It's an unwritten rule that wrestlers should always lose their last match and they should never retire with a title. There are very few circumstances where that happens. People are loving his heel work, though. Like, he's so entertaining as a bad guy. It doesn't mean that the match wasn't unentertaining, though. Dominic Mysterio, who got the Intercontinental belt, he's Rey Mysterio's son, and he's an example of where he was someone who was hated as a babyface, turned heel, hated as a heel for all the right reasons, and now he's turning babyface because everyone loves to hate him so much they unironically love him.
Anything else from that little clip? What was it? It was
oh yeah, about how Cody didn't say anything.
Yeah, Cody said it.
Yeah,
said a word and walked out after losing his title. Cena in the
okay, so yeah. How did people unpack the post-Cody loss?
The out of universe reason is that Cody Rhodes wants time off because his wife's having a second kid.
Oh, okay, that's nice. Yeah.
So he dropped the belt, and Cena also wanted to beat Ric Flair's record and have the most recognized title runs in WWE history.
Right.
Even though Ric Flair has something like 25 title runs, not all of them are acknowledged by WWE. I don't know why. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like Cody may have done some damage to his brand, just the way that he's been portrayed this year, because one of his complaints against Roman Reigns last year when challenging for the belt was that Roman Reigns never defended it. He defends it once every 2 months. Whereas Cody, while chasing the belt, was also having feuds with the Judgment Day and Shinsuke Nakamura on TV every single week.
Right.
And Cody's basically, like, in terms of the way that he's being booked, obviously, Cody Runnels, who plays Cody Rhodes, doesn't write the story himself, but the way that he's being portrayed is not helping any potential fan backlash. And I don't know what's going to happen when he comes back. Hopefully he comes back to a hero's welcome, but It's an interesting. The ultimate problem with wrestling is that heroes and villains, baby faces and heels, are not defined by what they do. They're defined by how the crowd responds to them.
Yeah. That idea of heat, right?
Yeah.
Generating audience
Yeah.
excitement or kind of a back and forth. Yeah.
If people cheer for you and you're a heel, well, turn babyface because they like you. Doesn't matter if you never do anything nice, as long as you say that you're a babyface, they'll like you. And if you're a face and you get booed, just turn heel and become evil, and they'll boo you for the right reasons.
So the last point that this clip was making, what is it? Dominic. They're saying
Daddy
that
Dom.
Dominic was receiving a "You Deserve It" chant in the post-show. He may turn babyface again after 2.5 years.
You think he gets another title run?
What's a "You Deserve It" post chat?
Basically, if a wrestler who hasn't had a title for a while gets a title and it's well earned, like if they've been, one of the things that's really praised by wrestling fans is wrestlers who wrestle every week, who show up and they put on good matches on a consistent basis. That's what people like. That's why Cody was so popular last year, because that's what he was doing. And Dominic Mysterio,
who's a heel,
and
it looks like a complete bogan,
looks
and
like he's
weaselly little character. Yeah. He's a great performance of kind of like, I'd see this guy at Coles or Woolies without shoes, drinking the milk straight from the carton.
Absolutely, always chewing gum. His like. A core tenet of his character is his obsession with chicken tendies. I don't know why either.
It's like deep fried or something, or crumbed chicken.
Crumbed chicken, usually frozen and put either in the deep fryer or in the oven. He has he literally, I saw one interview with him where he just there was just 2 solid minutes just talking about chicken tendies. It's just like an inherent part of his character. I don't know why. But because he puts on good matches and because he's so funny, everyone is able to see past the character he's playing to the fact that the performer is very talented and the performer is very entertaining. And the thing is that obviously wrestling is scripted, but the belts ideally shouldn't go arbitrarily to whoever creative thinks you'd have them. The belts should go to the people who are doing the best work, getting the best responses. And because once you've got a belt, all our eyes are on you, and you are going to be perceived as the person who's drawing the money. So even though it's the belts are not competitive in an athletic sense, they are competitive in, I suppose, like a marketing and a merchandising and a prestige sense. So they were chanting "You deserve it" at him because he's done such great work, and he's barely wrestled on premium live event. I think he's been in a couple of tag matches, and he was in a shark cage for a women's world title defense last year. But I don't remember him having a singles match in the 18 months that I've been watching. So for him to come out and have this like incredible on premium live event, he's definitely had singles matches on Raw that have always been very entertaining. So for him to come out and win this very entertaining fatal 4-way match, the audience is like, this guy is a really good performer. He's put on a good show. Consider us sports entertained, and that's why they've been going, "You deserve it. You deserve it."
I often hear that chant as I'm exiting the studio here. Yeah. Okay, so any other main points from WrestleMania we've missed?
Oh, we haven't mentioned Randy Orton's mystery opponent.
Yeah, what happened there?
Okay, so they'd spent 18 months building up a rivalry between, not 18 months, more like 6 months, building up a rivalry between Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. Two of the most popular performers for very different reasons. Kevin Owens is seen as one of the most safe workers, one of the most talented workers, and like everyone loves to boo him as a heel, but he puts on the best matches. He had a ladder match with Cody earlier in the year that was ridiculously good, and you look at it and you think, how are these guys not paralyzed? And Randy Orton's been on the roster for well over 20 years. One of the top baby faces. Everyone loves him. They've been building up because Randy needed some time off, so they wrote him out with inverted commas, with Kevin Owens doing a package pile driver on him and quote-unquote breaking his neck at Crown Jewel last year. Translation, he just wanted some time off. But a couple of weeks before WrestleMania, Kevin Owens, and this is actually really sad, Kevin Owens announced on SmackDown that he needed neck surgery and he was not going to be wrestling for the foreseeable future. But because, it's wrestling, it's the art of deception, people weren't sure if it was real or if it was part of the storyline. So he got a mixture of cheers and boos as he was leaving.
Oh, no.
And then he went on Chris Van Vliet's YouTube channel and said, "Oh yeah, this is real. I actually have to have neck surgery."
Oof.
But man, like
Jeez.
just for such a respected worker, for him to like get that response because people weren't sure if it was real or not. So that threw out the planning for Orton's match at Mania because that's a blow off that was a very long time in the making. But what they did was, there's a wrestler for Total Nonstop Action, Joe Hendry, whose basic gimmick is, what if Freddie Mercury, but Eurovision.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And essentially, he got really popular last year. He's been wrestling for 10 or 15 years. He's got a master's in business and marketing, and he's also an ex-professional musician. So he wrote his own theme song and did a music video to it, and he has all these little bits he does where he'll like turn around and smile at the camera, and it's just so ridiculously cheesy that you cannot help but enjoy it. And so they go, who's the mystery opponent going to be? And Orton's in the middle of the ring, and he's looking up the entranceway, and you see the two doors open, and it's all pitch black, and then you hear the first lines of the things going, say his name, and he appears, and everyone absolutely lost it. And he does the turn and the smile, and the lights come up, and Joe Hendry's there, like, oh my gosh! Because TNA, for many years was seen as a very solid alternative to WWE. They never got anywhere close to their numbers. But basically, if you didn't like the product that WWE was putting on, just tune in and watch TNA instead. So in the mid to late 2000s, they were on this absolute roll. And then some bad stuff happened, and then they've sort of recovered from it a little bit. Basically, Joe Hendry has been the shining point. He's the current TNA champion, and he's been the main attraction over the last year. He was at the Royal Rumble earlier this year because WWE and TNA are doing a lot of collaborations.
Right.
And so everyone just lost it. Randy Orton's doing all these hilarious, like, sort of, not bad, like smiling and nodding. And then you're hoping for a really good match. It's just a 3-minute squash match where Joe Hendry gets all of his bits in, but and gets his crowd responses, but he's just there to get squashed by Randy Orton.
Oh gosh!
But it climaxes with Orton trying Joe Hendry's poses for the audience into the camera, and it's a very good comedy bit, but as an actual, and it's a very good Mania moment because of that shock factor. As an actual match, though, like if they'd been given 10 minutes to work with, it would have. But ultimately, Triple H doesn't want to make the champion of another company look good.
Right.
Although I actually watched an interview with Hendry not long after, and the interviewer was like, "Do you feel like you were wasted at Mania?" And Joe Hendry said, "Look, I got to wrestle Randy Orton in his 20th WrestleMania at WrestleMania. So, no, I have no complaints. I can only go up from here. I've got a trading card, a Topps trading card that's out. That's already sold out. That's going to be worth a lot very soon,
Trading cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think, Taylor? Are you hyped? Is this hyping you into wrestling?
Yeah.
What's your wrestling status at the moment?
I haven't watched the WrestleMania from last year or this year actually.
It's on your bucket list.
Yeah.
Of what was discussed, is there anything you're particularly excited to hear, to see, to watch? The nut jobs, the smashing.
All about the nut jobs.
Testicles.
I still actually do want to watch the ones from last year and this year. It's just because they're not free on YouTube that I haven't watched them.
Yes. What is the status on?
They do upload individual matches to YouTube. And WWE did this thing where they uploaded the 50 quote unquote greatest WrestleMania matches. So a lot of them had been uploaded on YouTube before because there was blood in them.
Yeah.
But they've all been up, like 50 of them have been uploaded. Some of them won't be uploaded. They will never upload a Chris Benoit match because he murdered his wife and child and then committed suicide. So even though he had an incredible career, no one's ever, pardon me, going to want to talk about him in WWE ever again. But yeah, most of the matches and they upload into individual Rumbles as well. A whole bunch of Royal Rumbles are up there. A whole bunch of Elimination Chamber matches are up there. So like the only I guess they don't show you the hype packages, but I think the hype packages are their own videos anyway. So you can certainly watch most of a WrestleMania card on YouTube if you're willing to tolerate the ads.
Yeah.
Well, we're pretty much at time. Wrapping this up, what's around the corner? What's next on your excited wrestling calendar? Is there anything locally as well in Australia that?
Oh, there are a bunch of smaller wrestling promotions in Australia. There's Tassie Championship Wrestling in Launceston. There's Adelaide Championship Wrestling in, I don't know what city that's in. But there are a whole bunch of different wrestling promotions around Australia. It's like...
Because Australia does have some global representation in wrestling.
Yes. I mean, we got Grayson Waller and Rhea Ripley, who are major stars. And they often have a ring set up. I've been to a bunch of pop culture conventions and anime conventions that have had wrestling matches on. They're always good fun to watch live.
Yeah. So often, if you go to just a popular culture convention that might have, stormtroopers and anime cosplay, often you might also see a wrestling ring set up with people in the costumes wrestling.
And there's always a Macho Man cosplayer. There is always a Macho Man cosplayer.
That's that 80s Macho Man costume performance, right?
The pink and yellow cowboy hat, the sunglasses with the plastic strips over them, the tassels, the beard, dig it.
Just before if you could cosplay as any cosplayer, if you could cosplay as any wrestler from history, what do you have? Would you think, geez, if I could pull that off, I would cosplay as that wrestler in a heartbeat?
Me personally, I would probably I'd go as Crow Sting.
Crow, is that like the comic book Crow?
Yeah.
Right?
So,
that kind of gothic makeup?
Yes. Sting started out in the 1980s as a surfer who wore bright colors and had face paint and a blonde flat top. And then in 1996, Scott Hall, who was a huge movie buff, said, wrestling's getting darker. You're going to be the main hero of this really dark storyline. You should become the Crow. And so he literally had the Crow makeup for the last 25 years of his career.
Wow. Yeah. Taylor, do you have any, junkyard dog?
No.
Actually, you should definitely not do, because that's African American wrestler.
I can see Taylor doing Owen Hart.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I reckon I could pull off someone. Yeah, maybe the what's his name? The manager of CM Punk.
Oh, Paul Heyman.
Paul Heyman.
You could do that.
Paul Heyman.
Or you could do a Gomez Adams look and do Paul Bearer, who was the Undertaker's manager.
Be a deep cut, but yeah, I get fans. All right, well, we're at time. Thanks for listening to Media Mothership this week.